when she looked out the window, she saw the figure of this old priest, but the ones that had like those tall cone
Oh
white,
yeah, yeah. Even
the
freakier.
real- the really scary looking ones from Spain.
Yeah, yeah. Inquisition style.
Uh-huh.
I'm all, I'm all grown up.
All right, our guest today is a Puerto Rican animator, writer, and showrunner, and one of the fastest rising stars in animation right now. She's worked on iconic Nicktoons like The Fairly Odd Parents. She's contributed artwork to Draco Rosa's album Como Me Acuerdo, and her favorite food is bacalaitos. She once had a
Oh my
college professor rip her artwork off the wall, fold it into a paper plane, and throw it in the trash, but she was able to absolutely dunk on him with all the success that she's experienced since. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Niki Lopez.
Oh, that has to be my favorite introduction ever. That's
Wow,
amazing.
that's heavy praise. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, trying to stay cool on this very hot Southern Californian day.
Yeah, it's hot here in New York too, so I feel you.
Yeah, I mean it gets pretty humid up there, so.
Yeah, big facts, big facts. Speaking of the bacalaitos, we have a very similar thing in Guyanese culture called saltfish cake. Are you familiar with Guyanese people?
Oh no, I have never tried that dish. No.
So Guyana is also a Caribbean country, so we have that in common. So saltfish cake is basically, yeah, it's our version of a bacalaito. One day we'll do a side-by-side taste test.
I mean, yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you and I are kindred spirits. We got a lot to talk about. We're both Caribbean. We love spooky shit. Halloween is our favorite holiday. We love Indiana Jones. We love pirates. Before I even knew that much about you, I saw jack-o'-lanterns on your Twitter banner, and I was like, all right, we got something in common here.
Yeah, all about that esoteric life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if I've done my math correctly, which is kind of unlikely, if you were college class of '08, does that place you being born in 1986?
1985 year of the Goonies.
Year of the Goonies, your favorite movie.
I've got my top three, and Goonies is definitely one of them.
What are the other two?
Oh gosh. The other one, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? It's an
Oh,
absolute
all
miracle
day. Yeah.
that film got made, given all the obstacles that it faced.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
the third one, it tends to irk people, but I love Seven.
Yeah, Seven is amazing. Who does that irk?
Well, I don't know, because it's such a, it's a pretty bleak film. So they're like, oh, but you seem like such a cheery, happy personality. I'm like, yeah, but you know, didn't see
Pe-
that ending coming when I saw it.
People don't understand spooky motherfuckers like us. Like we're cheerful. It doesn't mean we don't like, dark shit, you know?
Exactly, exactly. It
Yeah.
makes it stronger.
Yeah, big facts. Okay, that's a solid top three. Okay, so 1985 makes you pretty much both an 80s and a 90s kid because you're still experiencing your adolescence in the 90s. So that's why I was asking. Well, I want to start talking about Halloween a little bit. So when you were growing up, what did celebrating Halloween look like for you in Puerto Rico? Were the traditions different? Were you trick or treating? What were your favorite costumes? Stuff like that.
It was incredibly different in the sense that, I feel like in the States, it's so embedded into the fall season, right? With your
Yeah.
jack-o'-lanterns and the foliage changing. And then in Puerto Rico, Halloween is a lot of fun if you're a little kid or if you're in your, later teenage years, maybe early days of college where you go out and party in costume. But then there was that in-between time where it's like, oh, you're wearing a costume for Halloween. Are you a baby?
Right, right.
So I always felt like I was in a bit of a purgatory state with my love for Halloween because, during those middle grade years, I wanted to continue celebrating it, but it felt like, oh no, you aged out. So I would definitely spend a lot of Halloweens just plopped in front of the television and binging on all sorts of spooky stuff to feel like I was truly celebrating the holiday.
What were your favorite Halloween specials? During that era. I know you got to do something really cool with Santiago, which was make a Halloween special, Mystery of the Vampirates. But yeah, what were your favorite Halloween specials?
Oh gosh. Have you ever seen Ernest Scared Stupid?
All day.
With the great Eartha Kitt. I love that movie so much. Pocus, I feel like it was essential
Yeah,
within
big
that
facts.
mix. All about those Are You Afraid of the Dark marathons.
Yes.
What else? Gosh, I mean, I would definitely sneak in like legitimately spooky movies like Child's Play or The Exorcist. Yeah, I got into that pretty young. So,
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Do you remember what your favorite episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark was?
the one that really not bothered me, but visually I thought it was kind of neat was what's it called? The one with the clown with the yellow and blue color scheme.
Oh yeah, the Ghastly Grinner.
Him. And then I also enjoyed a lot the one where the girl was within this dollhouse, and the minute that her hand falls off and the
Yes.
other friend had to fight it, it was like, damn, that's so metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, that's okay, that's good episode selection. Do you remember the one with the fire ghost?
Yes,
That
yes, I
one
do.
scared the shit
Yeah.
out of me.
I loved it all. That was definitely the Midnight Society was my initiation into the spooky. And there were other cool stuff like All Real Monsters.
Yep.
I definitely vibe with that. And back when I think it was Nickelodeon that was airing the Beetlejuice animated series. So
Yeah, that was it was definitely on Cartoon Network, possibly on Nickelodeon too. And territorially that stuff differs. So maybe in Puerto Rico it might have been on different networks than it was here too.
yeah, yeah, I want to say it was because I was a Nick kid through and through. That was my babysitter during the 90s. So
How perfect then that you are
I
a Nick
know
adult
that's
now. Yeah.
if I time traveled and told little Nikki, hey, guess what? You will be working at Nickelodeon. And who'd have thought you'd create a show? I probably would have called my bluff like
Right.
bullshit.
Yeah,
But
man, look at that. Look at that. You know,
yeah.
one thing about me is I actually like if there's a new show or a new cartoon that I haven't watched yet that's been on for a little bit, I'll judge it by the Halloween special. Like I'll watch that one first, and if I like the Halloween special, then I'll continue watching the show.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to, know if it meets your standards and if it's not, bye.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, what are your Halloween traditions look like now? I know that one Halloween you did a séance at Chateau Marmont where you heard whispers in your ear.
You are so good with your research. Wow. Yes. One Halloween many years ago, I was invited to a séance at Chateau Marmont, which I don't know if it's as accessible to the public now. If they went like the Soho House way and they have like some sort of, you
That sounds
know,
right. Yeah,
cringe.
got to be a little exclusive.
Yeah, hauntings should be open for all.
Yeah, everyone
Uh,
should be able to enjoy.
yeah, yeah. So there were some supernatural phenomena that manifested that I haven't been sure how to debunk. Like I've never had a situation I mean, and I put myself into a lot of situations where they're kind of spooky. Like I am big on going on ghost hunting tours and,
Yes.
you know, uh, diving into the dark tourism I guess that's what they call it, right? When you get into like the macabre and
Sure,
go to
sure.
catacombs or some underground tunnel system that,
Right.
ghost frolic or something of the sort. So I love that side of history, the things that are a little bit, on the spookier side of things. So, in all of my travels or experiences doing that, like I haven't quite been present in a situation where, all of a sudden I'm hearing like some unexplained clear whispers by my ear, or like, why am I picking up the smell of cigar? Nobody's smoking here. Everything's closed.
Yeah.
Like there was a whole inspection of the room. There's no, and unexplainable, but who knows? Maybe it's just really good theatrics, but had me pretty convinced at the moment.
That's were you a Hey Arnold fan being a Nick kid?
Not as much, to be honest. I kind of missed the boat on Hey Arnold.
It's all
Like,
good. There was an episode with a specter called Wheeze and Ed, and that's how they knew he was around because he used to smoke cigars and they would smell the smoke.
oh wow, okay. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I was big on Rocco,
Yeah.
loved Rocco, loved Ren and Stimpy. I was a big fan of Rugrats. All Real Monsters was also continuously one thing that I was always like ready to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
Um, those were my big ones, my go-to.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, then I know that you were a big Sailor Moon fan, and I know that one of your favorite animated movies you've mentioned is Fern Gully. Mine too. Um, Absolutely love Robin Williams as Batty Coda, R.I.P. Do you feel like those cartoons and the ones that you just mentioned had the biggest impact on your work now, or what other stuff were you watching that you feel directly inspired what you're working on now?
Hmm. I would say so. Absolutely Sailor Moon, Fern Gully. I love so much the magic that nature can offer, and trying to put some these undertones within a story where we have to protect the planet.
Yeah, yeah,
Life giver, right? So, Fern Gully had a profound impact in my life, and not only that, but when I was little, I had that VHS on loop to the point
yeah.
that I had to buy like two. My parents ended up buying like two or three other Fern Gully VHS.
Yo, same, same. Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I didn't realize that at the time, being a little kid. I would just take my dad's stack of office papers, and I was so enamored by these characters in these world that in this world that I started to, draw out what would happen, once that adventure ended, kind of creating a sequel in my head. And, I saw it as a picture book, but thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, I was storyboarding at the time.
yeah,
So, Fern Gully, I gotta give it credit. It really got me into that whole mindset of like, I want to tell stories like this, and I
yeah,
want to create characters that can, you know, have this impact on others.
yeah. Well, so speaking of that sort of like unintentional storyboarding, you sort of credit some of your first inspiration for animation to an exhibit at Disney World that no longer exists, The Magic of Disney Animation. Is that true?
Yeah. Wait, they don't do that anymore?
No, it's gone. It's gone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Do you remember how old you were when you saw that first? And was that sort of before or after you started this like storyboarding basically?
That was definitely after.
Okay,
That
cool.
happened after. Yeah. Gosh, how old was I? Because the Fern Gully thing, I think I might have been like 6 or 7. I gotta check. That movie came out in 1992. I was about 7 years old. That I became obsessed with drawing these stories. And I want to say around the age of maybe 10 to 12-ish. That's when I got, the chance to see the behind the scenes of
Yeah.
doing their stuff.
So when you
Uh,
saw that display, then you were kind of like, "Oh, I've been doing this."
I was like, wait, I could get a career out of drawing, and it doesn't have to be because of my family, it's my grandfather, he was an engineer. My dad's an engineer. My little brother's an engineer. When my dad would see me drawing, he was like, "You're gonna become an architect. This is great." But then I was seeing live how there were people dedicated to like the actual thing. Like
Yeah.
these movies didn't magically appear. There were people behind it who are drafting this story, and then they're drawing it out and painting it, and it's moving, and it's just this animated wonderland. I wanted to be a part of that. It was that was definitely my big aha moment.
Yeah.
Plus it had like all the every station had their cool little that's a word. Chotsky the little
Tchotchkes,
toy thing.
yeah.
Tchotchkes. I am so good with words. And I love it because it's so neat to flaunt your personality through your workspace. It didn't have to be like the super corporate, bland setting. It was full of color and life, and I like that. Being able to still nourish that inner child through the work that you're doing.
Do you have a number of tchotchkes at your workstation now?
Yes, I do.
Good, good,
Maybe
good, good, good.
too many spooky stuff, but it yeah, it's the space where it's my playground, so I have to keep it inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, to ask a few more 90s questions, who was your or who were your celebrity crushes in the 90s?
Um, I I loved Drop Dead Fred. Did you ever watch that movie?
Totally, totally.
I was obsessed with any male character that was unhinged, chaotic, and goofy, like
That was
Roger
your
Rabbit,
vibe.
Drop Dead Fred. Totally my type. I don't know. So that was definitely a crush. I remember when Casper came out, Devon Sawa, that was also like a major
That's a
crush.
very popular one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I appreciate so much that he went to from this like teeny bopper boy dream to doing more cult classics like Idle Hands and
Yeah, yeah.
others. Oh God, what's the one that takes SLC Punk? Um have you seen that one?
I
Salt Lake
don't
City Punk?
I don't think so.
He's also a pretty chaotic character in that one.
So
So
just your type.
yeah, exactly. It all made sense. I was like, why did I have a crush on this? Oh, it's because I could foresee that he was going to go down this path.
I know that one of your favorite musicians was Draco Rosa.
Roy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who else was in that, maybe top three for you?
Oh gosh, are you familiar with a 80s Spanish band, pop band known as Mecano?
No, I'm not.
Gosh, their range is very whimsical. But I remember listening to all their albums and the narrative was so rich. I felt like I was being told a fascinating story with with your beginning, middle, and end through the voice of this like siren like singer and that I would just like listen to it over and over again, and that always inspired me to visualize like these movies in my head. So Mecano was a big one. Soda Stereo was also another major one, and I really love Genesis, and from there you could say that I was obsessed with Phil Collins and I was obsessed with Peter Gabriel. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, a little bit of prog rock in there. Never hurt anybody. So I was a bit of an oddball kid. I wasn't, listening to a lot of underground or reggaeton or none of that. My brother was definitely covering that territory, but I was going more towards the what can I use as the melodic rocket that's going to launch my brain into this sort of daydream landscape so that I can just brainstorm a bunch of ideas and stuff like that. So that kind of
Yeah.
music.
One of the things that I really love about your work is how much you incorporate your culture into it in such an authentic way. It's authentic because it's you. It's inspired by your experiences and you write what you know. That obviously has shined through in Santiago and in the other side, which we'll talk about. But I know that growing up, your weekends consisted of exploring the rainforest and exploring caves and things like that. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. Was that something you were doing solo? Did you have like a neighborhood squad of friends?
Oh, a family. My family, my dad was always big on adventure.
Cool.
Still is, I feel like. My mom is more of the mother hen. And she wants to make sure that everybody's together and safe, but always game to follow through on adventures with my dad as the lead. So for a lot of the weekends, either we would go to the west side of the island, or perhaps we would just drive up the mountains to maybe check out this farm or go to a waterfall. And that nature really became like our almost like our playground, our cradle. And from there we would check out like caverns where there were petroglyphs left behind from Taino. So just that sense of exploration was deeply embedded in both my little brother and I through my dad and my mom, who's also big on history too. We would just take advantage being, living in the island and exploring everything that it had to offer. And usually that led to checking, and my dad is so food driven. So we would always end up
Nice.
in a chinchorro or a hidden restaurant that served all this dope, delicious food, like all the mofongo that your heart desired. Yeah, the more we how do you say, burn calories, the better, because we were gonna feast big time by the end of this adventure.
Yeah. Wow, what a cool family to grow up in that was, encouraging that sort of exploration and adventure.
Yeah, yeah. With they definitely instilled that Indy Jones spirit
I
in
I
us.
love that. I love that. Oh, I was gonna, earlier when you mentioned the Fern Gully VHS, for me, the VHSs that I ruined was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Peter Pan.
Peter Pan, really?
Yeah, yeah. And back in those days, if you might recall this, you couldn't just get a Disney movie; they'd be in the vault, quote unquote. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was
true.
it
You
was
had to wait till they decided to do like a remaster or
yeah,
something of
you had
this.
to wait. So I ruined the Queens Public Library's copy. And then once I ruined theirs, my dad bought a bootleg off the street in Manhattan, and it really was pretty bootleg. But it did the trick until maybe 10 years later when it came back out the vault.
Amazing. And now you have Disney Plus, so you can binge on that as many times as you want.
To my heart's content. To my heart's content. You were talking about your mom earlier. I've heard you say that she grew up in San German, which has a lot of pirate and ghost stories. And your grandma's sister actually used to see ghosts in her house. So I'm
Yeah.
curious as to if you've ever experienced anything while visiting there.
See, when we were little, my supposedly, yeah, my grandma, oh my gosh, my mom's gonna hear this and she's gonna be like, what are you doing talking about this? But my grandma, I would overhear them, right? Because they didn't want me or my brother to listen to any of this. So that, especially my little brother, he was a easily impressionable kid. So if he
Yeah.
heard anything, then his imagination would get the best of him and he wouldn't be able to sleep. But, I certainly overheard them saying like, oh, I heard like footsteps. My grandma, whose husband had passed away like many, many, many years before, she would suddenly hear like footsteps or the smell of her husband around the house sporadically, and the whole idea that, oh, his presence is still there, which I think
Yeah.
is very cool. That energy latches onto a place and you still feel like you're not quite alone.
Hmm.
uh so did I get to experience any of that? Not really, but yeah, so my grandma's sister, she lived right next to a school, a very old school that's not there anymore. And underneath that house and underneath the school, as well as the Portaceli and the other church within San Germán, there's like this underground tunnel system. And it was said that, nuns or priests, especially if there was some sort of conflict, like they would travel through this tunnel system. So supposedly one day in the afternoon, she was washing dishes, and then when she looked out the window, there was she saw the figure of this old priest, but the ones that had like those tall cone
Oh
white,
yeah, yeah. Even
the,
freakier.
real- the really scary looking ones from Spain.
Yeah, yeah. Inquisition style.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So she apparently like ran to the bedroom and locked herself. And yeah, by the time she came back out, she didn't see that figure again. But yeah, and there's supposedly more stories, but I really need to archive all of them. So maybe I can use them in future projects.
You totally should. You have such a rich library existing there already. So yeah.
Oh. Yeah, yeah. Family stories are always fun, especially when they delve a little bit into all things paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely. Guyana being part of the Caribbean as well has a lot of similar folk. I mean, it's very different because so Guyana is at the top of South America, but
Mhm.
it's the one South American country that was colonized by the British instead of the Spanish. So it's the only country there that doesn't speak Spanish. The ancestry is obviously number one, the indigenous folks that were there when it was colonized initially by the Dutch and then taken by the British, but they brought African slaves there. And when they freed the African slaves, they brought Indian indentured servants there, quote unquote. And so the cultural blend is big, African and Indian
That's,
influenced.
yeah.
It is a cool set of folklore that they all draw from.
Yeah. And the indigenous people were the Caribs
Yes,
or
yeah, yeah, correct.
fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I want to fast forward a little bit to an anecdote I mentioned earlier. But when you went to Ringling College of Art and Design, you had a bad experience with a professor there.
Yeah.
And I desperately hope that motherfucker has seen where you are now.
Oh,
Are you familiar with his current whereabouts?
I think he's still at Ringling. Ringling has yet to invite me to do
Oh
uh,
wow.
a
Which
talk or anything of the sort. So I
I'm
think
you're probably the most successful Ringling alum there is.
I'm sure they have other successful folks there.
Yeah, okay. You should name drop him so we could see his rate my professor.
See, when it comes to when the day comes that I'm flexing my Oscar for, an animated film that I directed or wrote,
Yes.
uh, that's when I'll really make sure to pour salt on an open wound if he's still around.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wish we could have seen his face at least when Variety listed you as one of the 10 animators to watch. How did you feel in that moment? Are you the type of person that felt, very dejected by it, or were you very like, fuck this dude, I'm just gonna shine and show him what's what?
I don't know. I tend to bounce back up fairly quickly when I get smacked down. I don't know. Maybe that's the resilience that exists within us people of the Caribbean,
Yeah,
especially with all the shit that we get bombarded with, whether it's a hurricane or,
sure, sure.
whatever. But when he did it, this professor has the reputation of just tearing everybody a new one if the work didn't really align to his standards. And I felt the work was fine. Was it, fairly last minute? Sure, yeah, okay. But I personally did not feel like that gave enough reason to rip it off the wall and fold it into a paper airplane.
There's
So
zero reason to do that. Even if it was the worst, there's zero reason to do that to
oh,
people.
but
Yeah,
this guy, like, if somebody did a oil painting 2 days before they were to do a critique,
yeah.
he would just grab a napkin and smear that napkin over the painting and ruin the whole thing. Like that's very much his style, just tearing you down.
Oh my
Not
God.
constructive at all. And it's all for the theatrics of it,
Sure,
right?
sure, sure.
Much a bully mentality. I kind of like shrugged it off and I was like, That's fine. I know how to I turn shit into flowers. Like I'll bounce back off of this one." And he
Yeah,
was like, okay, whatever." Like I think he was expecting me to run and cry or be sad or
right.
fight, and I was like, "Whatever, do it. I'm gonna jump back up and do something better."
Love it. And
And
you goddamn well did.
I mean, yeah, listen, we're all out here trying our best, and I feel like there's already so much crap out there in the world, and people are taking like a big leap of faith doing something creative.
Yeah.
Why not be an ally? Why not support somebody and do something more than just like being an aggressive poo-poo head? So
100%, 100%. Cool. Well, I love the way you reacted to that. You graduated and you got hired at an ad agency back in Puerto Rico, and that's where you learned a lot about pitching. So while you were there at the ad agency, were you working on any of your own animation stuff with designs of saying, okay, eventually that's what I'm going to be pursuing?
no, not really. I mean, here's the thing that I loved about advertising. It allowed me to think fast about an idea
Yeah.
and learn how to let go. Because if you're pitching shows, it's so easy to get lost in the process of developing it. And no, it just has to be perfect. I'm going to spend 7 months working on this pitch. And then the time passes by, and perhaps what you're doing that the company was looking for, somebody else filled in that void by the time you were doing it. So being able to generate ideas quickly, present them, get feedback, and have it evolved or check it out. I think that was one of the most precious things that experience taught me. And yeah, it's just like that very idea of like, don't just fall in love with one idea. It's important as a creative that you are able to play with a lot, that you're able to create different things, you know.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you have that one idea and then what's next? Are you
Right.
just going to do like another version of the same thing? Like, I don't know.
That attitude and the resilience and the persistence in your career is one of the things that's most inspirational to me. You eventually flew back to Burbank to go to
Yeah.
CTN, and it was there that you did
Yeah.
some networking and you found out about the Nick Turnship program, and you tried twice for that, which is amazing.
Yes.
You didn't get in the first time, so you were like, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you eventually get in the Nick Turnship program. You start working at Nickelodeon, summer of 2010.
Summer of 2010. Yeah. Oh my God. So long ago. It's been 14 years now.
Wow, look at that.
We're old.
So you're on
I'm very old.
you're on Fairly Odd Parents, you're on Harvey Beaks, and now I want to get to the part like you kind of referenced earlier. How did you approach that first pitch? Who did you go to and say, was the atmosphere at Nick a general, like, people felt open to hearing ideas, or were you just like, all right, I'm going to approach this person and say, I got something I want you to hear?
Well, at that time, yes, they were open to it. When I started interning at Nickelodeon, they were going through their DreamWorks films turned into series era. So there was Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness. There was Penguins of Madagascar and
Right,
the
right.
Monster and Alien show. And it didn't seem like there was room to create any original IP. Anyway, as all things, the leadership always changes and the demands up top also change. And Nickelodeon wanted to rebrand and go back to its creator-driven ways. So they had this big um, presentation showing us what they had on their slate in development for both big kids and preschool. And I really resonated what was being presented on the preschool side. I thought that there was so much charm to the characters, to the worlds, to the lessons being told. There was just something very authentic and full of heart. And I felt like my voice and my sense of humor probably worked best for that space rather than a lot of the stuff that they were doing on the big kid side, which, this is in no shape or form putting it down, but like I'm not flexing my like fart jokes. That's not exactly like my strong suit. I
Yeah, no
think
doubt.
folks can do it better. But yeah, so I decided to go down the preschool route. And I also feel like preschoolers are the coolest audience because they are willing to play they have such a vibrant imagination where these
So true.
characters and these worlds are very real to them, so they'll role play, they will become these characters or these characters become their best friends. So I don't know, I felt like the impact that you can do with preschool is just so beautiful. So I wanted to lend my voice to that. And so again, in this whole presentation, they were like, do you want to pitch us an idea? Here's our email. The doors are open, which so thankful that Nickelodeon had that open
That's so
door
dope.
policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all places do.
No.
Some places they truly believe that a good story could come from anyone and anywhere.
Yeah.
Some places, if you're a PA, they're like, well, you're a PA, do production work. We don't want to hear your story.
Right.
And at Nick, they were like, we have heard great stories from interns, PAs, animatic editors, the whole spectrum. So yes, we do want to hear your story. And so I got in contact with some development execs and I started to learn a little bit about the requirements for a preschool show, what things are essential, like the play pattern of the show, what themes work for this audience. How can you tie in that Nick brand into a preschool show, what they were looking for. And I just tried to soak up as much knowledge as I could. And I pitched a couple of times. I think I pitched about 4 times before I pitched Santiago, and each one, again, one thing dies, that's okay. That's going to become the perfect fertilizer to grow even more beautiful flowers. And from there, I would gain another lesson. Okay, this is what I'm going to bring into my new pitch. And they were noticing that, the stories were evolving, the characters were becoming more interesting. I was taking notes really well, and I became somebody that they were like, oh, she could be like a really good person to work with. She's very collaborative and she asks all the right questions and she takes notes really well. Eventually, one of the execs spoke to, so Mary Harrington, she's the fairy godmother of Nickelodeon. This lady has been at Nick since the very beginning. She
Shout
has
out, Mary.
truly, like, she is responsible for such great shows as like Hey Arnold and Invader Zim. Like, she was there encouraging um Jonan when he was, just starting to create Zim, as well as the creator from Hey Arnold, which started
Craig
with,
Bartlett, yeah.
yeah, that started within a little napkin, I believe, or something like that. Little hazy on the details of that story, but she really is like that. That little tracker when you're trying to find treasure. She's a good detector for gold.
Yeah.
And she had a meeting with me, and I was telling her like, well, I have this idea, and maybe this is what Nick is looking for. And she stopped me in my tracks, and she was like, don't think about what Nickelodeon is looking for. I want to hear what was important to you when you were little. And at that time, there weren't exactly a lot of people from Puerto Rico at Nickelodeon. So, she really emphasized to me, you grew up in an island, and your perspective, your childhood is going to be very different than, some other folks' childhood in the States. So what was that like for you? What were the things that you were really into? And I started to tell her about, my family and how we would go on all these adventures through the islands, and how I was really into pirates and lore, and how we have this like historical figure in Puerto Rico, and we call him like the Robin Hood of the high seas. And when I
El
said Robin,
Pirata Cofre, sí.
yeah, exactly. So when I said that to her, she had like that little twinkle in her eyes, like, there's something there, chase that. And she gave me a deadline, but come back in a month. I want to see this pitch deck in a month. So I used all my vacation days, all my sick days. I flew to Puerto Rico. I would go to Old San Juan, sit at a bench, and start like vomiting like all these little details of like, oh, and this is what Santiago is like, and he's got this heart of gold, and the island chooses him because he's so altruistic and he looks after others, and da, 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 da. I started to figure out the magic of the island, the legend of Capitan Calavera, and Lorelai, and how she's this mermaid who can transform into a girl, and then Kiko de Coqui, who's always on Santi's. All of these things, I love going back home because home is my muse. I
Yeah.
feel like it kind of whispers its ideas into my ear, and I just start to automatically let go and put it all together. And so after a little bit in Puerto Rico, as I was making my way back to the States, I stopped in St. Augustine to go to the Pirates Museum, and then I went to New
Cool.
Orleans to go to a couple of
Yes.
pirate tours. And by the tail end of that, I remember I pitched it. I pitched Santiago in November 2016 before Thanksgiving, and by the time they came back from vacation, they were like, "This is really good. We want to develop it into a series." So yeah, so that's how Santi came about.
I love that story. I love that story. One of the things that I want to touch upon is the repeated failures. I'm a big believer in repeated failure being a part of ultimate success. I think it's really cool, first of all, that you doing a failed pitch didn't stop them from hearing another pitch and another pitch. Why do you think that is?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, they definitely had their list of favorite veteran creators that they had worked with. And I'm sure those people were pitching and all that jazz, but I think they appreciated my restless spirit.
Yeah, cool.
And dedication, that I really had a genuine love for storytelling. And even though I didn't, my background into this field, like becoming a showrunner wasn't exactly, the classic route, because usually you have storyboard artists or screenwriters who, they start off as that and then they become like a showrunner or
Right.
a creator or something of the sort. And I came through a production, then a designer path. And that's a rarity, but you have some juggernauts who also came through that path, like Jorge Gutierrez and Craig McCracken.
Big facts.
Yeah. So again, emphasizing a good story can come from anybody. And if anything, like we can be so visual with our storytelling skills, we can really describe and envision these characters and this world in such a specific way. So yeah, so I felt like they did sense a superpower there. And me having that willingness to really listen and to implement changes where needed. These people just want to work. It's a business after all. So yes, they want to work with really good creative talent that can bring fresh ideas, but they also have to be willing to collaborate. Like we have to be somebody that there's going to be a note process, and it's how you take in that feedback and how you implement it into your project to make it something better, something stronger that everybody can be proud of and we can air at the end of the day. So yeah, so I guess I checked those boxes for them. I don't
Yeah.
know.
They obviously made the right choice. The amount of dedication that you put into just the research for that pitch. I mean, that sounds like when you hear, directors of like big budget blockbusters researching to put into their film and stuff like that. I think it's really cool that you went back home, you went to New Orleans, you did all this research just to make it feel like proper.
You really want to put that authentic layer over things, like you can really speak to this story. And also it just makes for an even greater story to tell. Like, oh, I went here and I did this and I felt like I went into, I don't know, like it was like a treasure hunt of sorts. I had to collect all these clues to get to that treasure trove, which was Santiago. So
Yeah. New Orleans, I've only been once. I got to go back, but it's so funny that you mentioned about the pirate tours, because when I went, I was with a small group of friends and they spent the entire weekend getting trashed. So I was solo. I just went solo to all these different haunted and pirate tours, and I had the best time.
oh, that's awesome. Good.
I know that you have ghost hunting gear that you travel with. What does that consist of? I
Yeah.
imagine you have like an EMF reader. Like, what type of gear are you traveling with?
Yeah, do I have oh yeah, I have a ghost meter here. Wait 1 second. Let me go. Whoop,
Yeah,
I'm dropping
bust it out,
everything.
bust it out.
So I have a little ghost meter here. Oh, but I have to replace the batteries. So it's in need of batteries, but I always travel with my little ghost meter. There's also dowsing rods that are used.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't like them so much. I feel like you really need to have a good handle of those rods. My hands tend to shake naturally a lot, so
Sure.
I'm not the best person to handle those tools, but good to have. And I feel like sometimes for these ghost hunting expeditions, it's important to train that, call it a sixth sense if you want, like your intuition, just tuning into the field of energy and what you can pick up around it, listening to things, feeling things, seeing things, bringing along a camera, especially if you have like aside from your phone, like a proper digital camera, and seeing what you can pick up. There's some neat stuff that shows up that you can maybe debunk at times, or maybe you get a little surprise of an apparition. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an adventure. I like those things because it's another adventure. It's another story to tell. We are a species that we have built community by gathering together and telling stories.
Yeah.
So continue that legacy through ghosts.
Big facts, big facts. Would you firmly call yourself a believer in that case?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am. Yes.
I can't wait to see the other side. I
Can't wait
hope.
to release it.
Yeah. Are there any updates that you can share on that?
It was an official selection for Best Animated U.S. Short at LaLeaf this year, which is, I mean, I was elated. It was such a huge honor, especially being able to screen it in the Chinese theater and for it to receive such a positive reaction. It made me feel good. Like, okay, I feel validation. This is something that the public seems to want, but
Yeah.
we're just hoping that they can release all these shorts to the public, maybe through YouTube. We'll see.
Yeah.
They're a little bit particular when something is in development. However, Warner Brothers recently announced all of the stuff that they have in development, and it's it generating buzz, which is what you need to
Yeah.
really, make that project's chances of being a success go higher. So,
Yeah.
but I know that this industry has its complicated webs of working, so I'm just trusting the process. But I know that eventually I'll be able to share that short with the public.
Yeah.
But we're still trying to develop it into a series. So
Yeah.
hopefully we get a green light. It is trying times for originals though, so
Sure.
we'll see. But
Yeah.
I am certainly lighting all my candles.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I will do whatever I can to support. I was so happy to see it existing. It's an interesting point in my life because for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been writing a cartoon that is heavily based in Guyanese supernatural folklore.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
yeah. So it's also a Caribbean spooky show. Like I said, different because it's a different area and it's a totally different set of folklore. But you making that headway was such a big deal to me because I don't think I've seen your story represented that way on any network or streaming service before, the same way that I don't think I've seen, or I know that I haven't seen my story represented. I'm pulling for you so hard because this is the
I'm pulling for
success of that.
yours.
Thank you. If you could bring back just one thing from the 90s, what would it be?
I mean, I don't want to say like, oh, pull away from phones and like we had the internet, absolutely. But I see so many kids just so immersed in their iPads
Oh
and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And I almost loved how we all gathered around, like, oh, this show is playing at this specific time, and we're gonna watch it. And then after that, we're gonna go outside and play and become the Ninja Turtles or become the Power Rangers. So I don't
Yes.
know. I guess that idea of things there being maybe a little less distractions, and now we're bombarded with so much information from a
Yeah.
very early age that I think that there's a heightened chance of losing that childlike wonder, and we're
Very
just
heightened.
right. It's like a anxiety boot camp straight up.
Totally. No, that's something I could talk about for days, but I fully agree with you. The concept of being detached and like being present with people and living in the moment. And I say that as someone who, I make my entire living off of the phone and social media and using it to do music and do content and and maintain that presence as
Yeah.
but you know in as controlled of a manner as possibly can be, but especially thinking about it from the childhood perspective, it's so crazy to witness that. I mean, even just from nieces and nephews, I'm like, man, go use your imagination and play, bro.
Yeah. See, there's definitely the positive that we can now helm our projects, right? We don't have to go through the usual gatekeepers that they're the ones who
Right.
decide if our voices are worthy or not. So that's definitely a massive plus. But being connected all the time, that's not good for your mental health at all. So
No,
yeah,
there are many studies to prove the same. That it's definitely very bad for mental. I mean, just think about the fact that when we were in school, it was natural to just sort of compare yourself to people in school, right? That you were around. Oh, I want to be cool like this person or whatever the case may be. And then now having to compare yourself to people all around the world all the time. That's like, I can't even fathom that.
yeah. It's brutal. And now there's AI. It's like
Right.
How can you differentiate?
Yeah, exactly. Especially as an impressionable mind. How do you? Yeah, it's nuts. But that's a great answer. I like that answer. We haven't gotten that before. Well, Niki, I want to say thank you so much, not only for being so generous with your time today. I know you have a very busy schedule, but also just for all the amazing work that you do. The fact that you're killing it right now in the industry is so inspirational to me, and it's to many other folks out there to see you, rising as a star. It really is a beautiful thing. So thanks for your work and doing what you do. Keep on doing it.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your podcast. This is such an honor. We definitely need to do this again. Maybe when
Yeah,
the side comes out, who knows?
absolutely. That would be perfect.
I'll bring the Ouija board. Maybe we can add it into the mix.
Hey, let's go. Do you play? Do you mess with the Ouija board?
When I was little with friends, sure. I think that's a rite of passage, right?
Yeah, I was always too shit scared to do it. I've watched.
Yeah, it's interesting. But
Awesome.
that's a story for another day.
Okay, maybe we'll do a Halloween special.
Sounds good to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm all grown up.
Psych.
I'm all grown up. SYKE.